You're listening to Puma Podcast.
They disguise it as a cannabis factory, but it is a shabu factory.
I see.
That's why Duterte ordered us, me, and Wilkins Villanueva to kill all the workers and the chemists of the Davao Laboratory. And I can pinpoint even up to now where I buried their bodies.
Remember that voice? That's former police officer Arthur Lascañas, who claims to have been part of the Davao Death Squad under then Davao City Mayor Rodrigo Duterte. I'm Franco Luna, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. You just heard a snippet from an exclusive interview by Verifiled's columnist Antonio Montalvana. The fellow independent news outlet gave us permission to release the opinion piece as a podcast. The International Criminal Court is pushing to investigate former President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs. But in this episode, we'll hear from a former hitman who allegedly killed on his instructions. Pero teka muna, sa ilalim ng administrasyon ni President Marcos, makakapasok ba sa Pilipinas ang mga investigador ng ICC para imbestigahan ang patayan noong panahon ni Duterte? Let's listen to international human rights lawyer Ruben Carranza.
The continuation of the drug war in many ways is contingent on who the president is now. Part of what Duterte unleashed has been the creation of a national death squad that has now come to exist apart from Duterte himself. And so it's important to mention this because I don't think we can reckon with accountability for the drug war based on who the president of the Philippines is.
Lascañas blew the whistle on Duterte in 2016 at the Senate. That series of hearings also caused Senator Laila de Lima, then chairman of the Senate Committee on Justice, to be maligned for her personal life, falsely accused, and deprived of liberty for almost 7 long years. By the way, Wilkins Villanueva, whose name Lascañas mentioned at the top of this episode, became Director General of the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency for a time during the Duterte administration. Sino ba si Lascañas? Before we delve into his testimony, let's paint a picture of the man himself. Because Arturo Lascañas, who was in the police service for 35 years, wasn't always a death squad hitman. Lascañas started as a young police officer, idealistic and eager to serve. But the streets of Davao, teeming with crime and corruption, chipped away at his principles. He found himself drawn into a shadowy world, lured by the promise of quick cash and a sense of belonging. Lascañas claims he met then Mayor Duterte around 1988, the start of his descent into crime. He paints Duterte as a charismatic leader, demanding absolute loyalty and obedience. He alleges that it was Duterte who formed the Davao Death Squad, a vigilante group tasked with eliminating criminals and undesirables, bypassing the law with brutal efficiency.
May isa pang incident. Ito po ay paggawa namin na pagmasakir sa isang buong pamilya na taga General Santos City.
That was Lascañas at the Senate hearing in February 2017, just a few days before Senator Laila was arrested. Lascañas rose through the ranks, becoming one of Duterte's trusted lieutenants. He describes a chilling routine, receiving targets, planning abductions, executing killings, all with practiced ease. When Duterte became president, Lascañas claimed that guilt gnawed at him and that fear kept him silent. Allegedly, he felt he was trapped in a cycle of violence and that his humanity was slowly eroding.
I have seen the Domoy Shabu Laboratory for several times because I was instructed by Mayor Duterte before with Sunny Biliventura to escort an alleged canned fish factory delivered to the Toril Fishport Complex.
A canned fish factory.
A canned fish factory allegedly for export to Malaysia, but it was all a Shabu laboratory.
But something shifted. Lascañas fled the Philippines, seeking refuge outside the country. Perhaps it was the weight of his confessed sins, the faces of the victims he couldn't ignore anymore. He resurfaced a changed man, ready to break the code of silence. His tell-all testimony before the Senate was a wild gamble, a desperate attempt to atone and expose what Lascañas says is the truth, no matter the cost. Here's how he described it himself.
Isa po doon, Your Honor, is hindi ko na kaya labanan ng konsensya ko.
Yun lang po kaya ang dahilan dahil sa konsensya at wala nang iba?
Yung personal ko po na promise ko sa Panginoon na ibigin another chance in life, hindi ko dalahin ito sa libingan ko.
Who is Lascañas? A killer claiming redemption? A pawn turned whistleblower? His motives might be questioned given his past, but his words carry the stench of reality. He's no hero, but he's a crucial piece in the puzzle, a voice from the heart of the darkness, shedding light on a system fueled by fear and impunity.
I am committed to stop drugs before I go out. Which means to say, marami pang patayan to. Sa CNN, pati BBC since yesterday, said that Duterte admits killing or shooting the criminals. Hindi sila nagkamali. Papatayin ko talaga magagawin. My campaign against drug will not stop until the end of my term.
Lascañas painted a grim picture of a systematic operation, with DDS members receiving payments for targeted killings. He described kidnappings, torture, and extrajudicial executions, all carried out with impunity. His claims, if corroborated, could be damning evidence for the ICC, potentially implicating Duterte himself in a web of state-sanctioned violence. And Arthur Lascañas is not the only former cop who has made these claims. We'll pause for a moment, but we'll leave you with the words of Eduardo Asierto.
Ako din po ang parehong Police Colonel Asierto na matagal nang ipinapahanap at pinapapatay ni Pangulong Duterte sa militar at sa kapwa ko pulis dahil lamang sa inimbestigahan ko ang ilang taong malalapit pala sa kanya at kay Senator Bongo. Ako po at ang kasamahan kong si Police Captain Lito Perote ang nakadiskubre sa mga illegal na aktibidad at gumawa ng report tungkol kay Michael Yang at Alan Lim, mga personalidad sa illegal na droga na laging nakikita nakasama ni Pangulong Duterte at ni Senator Bongo. Dinukot na po nila si Perote at malamang patay na.
We have to remember that these killings, and this is very important, that these killings, or most of these killings, are alleged to have been committed by state forces. And this is where our dilemma is. Those who are statutorily mandated to investigate cases are the very same ones who are going to be investigated. Kanino ka pupunta para magpa-imbestiga ng kaso? Diba sa police? So we're building our cases on our own. This feeling that umpisa pa lang talo ka na, it seeps into every other stage or every other proceedings in the Philippines.
That's lawyer Cristina Conti. She represents victims of the drug war as an accredited assistant to counsel before the ICC. She's also a member of Rise Up for Life and for Rights. That's a coalition of families of victims of the drug war. We spoke to her when the Marcos administration signaled its intent not to cooperate with the ICC. While government has acknowledged up to 7,000 extrajudicial killings that need to be investigated, and Duterte's own Justice Department has admitted to the United Nations that more than half of all drug war operations under Tokhang are questionable, only one drug war killing has ever resulted in a conviction. And human rights groups say the true death toll is closer to 30,000. And former police officer Arthur Lascañas says it all started with the former president.
So, to inform all humanity, not only in the southern Philippines, in Mindanao, or in the part of Davao City, Duterte is the lord of all the drug lords in the southern Philippines. He is the most dangerous person in the southern hemisphere. You must know it.
Lascañas doesn't just talk about killings, he paints them. He describes the Davao night transformed into a hunting ground. Targets snatched from their homes and buried in deep graves around the city, and he says he was paid 100,000 pesos for a few kills. But the biggest thing is that he's talked about who he worked with.
And this canned fish factory in Toril, was it the only Shabu laboratory in all Davao City?
No, there is another Shabu laboratory. It was in Barangay Obrero.
Barangay Obrero?
Yes, that's what I know. Barangay Obrero in Dumoy, Toril.
Okay. Can you expound a little bit? Who is Sammy Oy? I know he is a known businessman in Davao City.
Sammy Oy is one of the responsible persons why Michael Yang entered Davao City with his Shabu chemist. He established the DCLA as a front.
What business is this, sir?
DCLA.
And this is owned by Sammy Oy?
Michael Yang.
Michael Yang.
And the part of the building was owned by Sammy Oy.
Sir, in your affidavit, you called Sammy Oy the gambling and shabu mafia of Davao City.
That's correct.
Why did you call him that?
Siya ang pinaka-financer sa mga lasto.
If those names sound familiar, that's because they are. Just to jog your memory, Yang was officially Presidential Economic Advisor in 2018, and he remained influential in the Duterte government until he was implicated in the Farmally scandal. On the other hand, Uy contributed 30 million pesos to Duterte's presidential campaign in 2016. The DDS allegedly used code names and jargon to be able to discuss targets and operations without fear of arousing suspicion. And it was allegedly Duterte himself who advised the group to use a special language. Lascañas said in his affidavit that Superman is none other than Mayor Duterte himself.
Edgar Matobato mentioned that Superman really owned a shabu laboratory. Do you confirm that?
That's correct.
And Superman was aware of that? All of that?
Not only aware, Superman was a part of it.
That's right, Arthur insists that the former president not only sanctioned a shabu laboratory, he actually owned it. You might already know Arthur's name and his story, but this is the first time he said Duterte allowed the drug trade to proliferate in his home turf. Nothing happens in Davao without Duterte's blessing, he said. And the drugs that stayed there were the drugs that the beloved mayor had an active role in. Let's hear Lascañas tell us more about what he saw in what was supposed to be a canned fish factory.
I have seen the Dumoy Shabu laboratory for several times because I was instructed by Mayor Duterte before with Sunny Biliventura to escort an alleged canned fish factory delivered to the Toril Fishport Complex.
A canned fish factory?
A canned fish factory allegedly for export to Malaysia, but it was all a Shabu laboratory.
Were you able to go inside?
Not exactly that I was able to go inside, but I was see Michael Yang outside when we talk about the extortion of the traffic police in the Toril area. We delivered to the Toril Fishport more than 3 times. It was all drugs, shabu.
Lascañas has since testified in a pretrial hearing of the International Criminal Court for Duterte's alleged crimes against humanity. His tell-all came in the form of a 186-page affidavit accepted by the global court. And this all comes despite promises from President Marcos himself that the drug situation is going to be different from the one we saw under Duterte. He had this to say during his sauna in late July.
The campaign against illegal drugs continues, but it has taken on a new face. It is now geared towards community-based treatment, rehabilitation, education, and reintegration to curb drug dependence amongst our affected citizenry. We will relentlessly continue our fight against drug syndicates, shutting down their illegal activities and dismantle their network of operations.
The ICC's probe is ongoing, and the road to justice has been and will still be long and arduous. But with each chilling revelation, the pressure mounts. Will Lascañas' testimony be the tipping point? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the world is watching. And Arturo Lascañas, the man with blood on his hands and who knows where the bodies are buried, has ignited a fire that may yet consume the darkness. Here he is again.
And you stand by this knowledge, sir. This is not just rumor or chismis.
I stand it. Personally, I will. I'm very much prepared to face them face to face. Because I'm a Filipino, I have to defend my country. Not this kind of criminals, especially Duterte. I will fight them until the last of my breath. Why not face me face to face in the ICC? He's a lawyer.
Yes.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm just an investigator. But I can confront him. I can prove my case. That's it. I will challenge Rudy, my friend. I'm sorry, but I have to defend our country, not you.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. Our Teka Teka News executive producer is Jill Caro, and our senior editor is Veronica Uy. If you found this episode useful, share it with a friend. Help Teka Teka News reach more people and keep the show going. Thanks for listening.